Hey there. Before you drift off tonight, I want you to imagine something. You're waking up on a winter morning at a place with no central heating, no running water, no electricity. Just the sound of wind creaking through wooden beams and the distant groan of a church bell echoing across a frozen field. Your bed? A pile of straw crawling with fleas. Your blanket? A rough wool cloak, still damp from yesterday's rain. And your breath? It hangs in the air like smoke, even indoors. This isn't a nightmare. It's a regular morning in the Middle Ages. Forget everything you've seen in movies. Forget knights in shining armor, candlelit banquets, or princesses in towers. Because for most people, medieval life wasn't about romance or glory. It was about surviving, one cold, hungry, aching day at a time. And tonight, we're going to walk through one of those days together. From the moment you crack open your eyes in a dark timber hut, to the moment you try to fall asleep again, huddled beside the fire, hoping the rats don't come too close. You'll feel the scratch of wool on your skin, the ache of hunger in your belly, the sting of icy water on your hands. You'll hear the low murmur of Latin prayers, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, and the silence after punishment falls. You'll understand why people worked until their hands bled, why they feared the night, why they believed in saints and witches and the devil. And maybe, by the end, you'll understand why you wouldn't last a single day in their world. But don't worry, you don't have to live it. You just have to listen. So lie back, close your eyes, and let's begin. Your day in the Middle Ages. The cold that never leaves. Before the sun, before the birds, before any conscious thought has truly formed in your mind, there is the cold. It is the first thing you feel, the last thing you remember from the night before, and the constant, unwelcome companion of your life. This is not the brisk, clean cold of a modern winter morning, the kind that makes you pull a soft duvet tighter. This is a deep, damp, and personal cold. It lives in the walls of your hut, in the packed earth of the floor, and it feels as though it has settled deep inside your bones, a permanent ache that never truly subsides. You're relying on a pallet of straw, maybe with a few rags or a rough sack thrown over it for cushioning. It is compressed and shifted during the night, and now a sharp stone or a lump of hard earth is digging into your back. The blanket, if you are lucky enough to have one, is made of coarse, scratchy wool. It is heavy, but it offers little in the way of real warmth. It is woven to be durable, not comfortable, and it smells of lanolin, wood smoke, and the faint, musty scent of damp that permeates everything you own. Your breath hangs in the air before you, a small, fleeting cloud of white in the gloom. The air you breathe is thick and heavy, stinging your lungs with its icy touch. You share this single small room with your entire family. Your parents, your siblings, perhaps a grandparent, all huddled together for shared body heat. You can hear their soft, sleeping breaths, the occasional cough or a whimper from a younger sibling dreaming. The intimacy is absolute, but it offers no comfort, only the knowledge that everyone else is just as cold as you are. The hut itself is a vessel for the cold. The walls are made of wattle and daub, a lattice of woven sticks packed with a mixture of mud, clay, straw, and animal dung. It is a marvel of simple engineering, but it is not insulated. Gaps and cracks have formed, and through them the wind whispers, a low, mournful sound that seems to mock your attempts at warmth. There are no glass windows. Glass is a luxury beyond the comprehension of a peasant. There might be a small opening in the wall, a wind eye, covered by a wooden shutter or a piece of stretched animal skin. It is kept closed tight at night, plunging the room into near total darkness. But even so, the cold finds its way in around the edges. The roof is thatch, a thick layer of straw or reeds. It's effective at keeping out the rain, for a time, but it's also a haven from mice, spiders, and insects, whose rustling and scurrying is a familiar sound in the quiet of the night. The thatch does little to trap heat. The warmth from your bodies and from the embers of yesterday's fire rises and simply escapes into the frozen sky. In the center of the room is the hearth, a simple circle of stones on the dirt floor. It is the heart of your home, but right now it is just a pile of gray ash and a few glowing red embers. The fire is never allowed to go out completely, as restarting it with flint and steel is a difficult, time-consuming task. One of the first chores of the morning will be to coax it back to life, to feed it precious twigs and peat until it offers a meager, smoky flame. But even when the fire is roaring, its heat is localized. It will warm your front while the cold continues to attack your back. The room will fill with smoke, as there is no chimney, only a hole in the roof for the smoke to escape. This smoke stings your eyes, irritates your lungs, and coats every surface and every person in a thin layer of soot. The cold dictates everything. It dictates how you sleep, curled into a tight ball. It dictates how you move in the morning, slowly, stiffly, your joints protesting with every motion. It makes the simple act of getting up a monumental effort of will. Your fingers are stiff and clumsy, your toes numb. The cold makes old injuries ache with a renewed vengeance, a dull throb that reminds you of past pains. It saps your energy before the day has even begun, creating a deep-seated weariness that will follow you until you lie down again in the evening. This is not a temporary discomfort. It is the fundamental state of being for much of the year. In the depths of winter, the water in the bucket by the door might be frozen solid. The ground outside is as hard as iron, and the world is painted in shades of gray and white. But even in autumn and spring, the damp chill is relentless, seeping into your clothes, your home, and your spirit. The dream of being truly, thoroughly warm is a fantasy as distant as a king's feast. For now, there is only the cold, and the knowledge that the day's labor must be done, regardless of how your body cries out for the simple, impossible luxury of warmth.
Bread, gruel, and hollow hunger. Once the pervasive cold has forced you from your straw pallet, another, more urgent feeling takes over: the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. Hunger is the true ruler of the medieval world. It is a constant presence, a dull ache that sharpens into a painful cramp. It dictates the seasons of your life, the rhythm of your days, and the content of your prayers. Your first thoughts upon waking are not of ambition or leisure, but of food. And what passes for breakfast is a stark reminder of your place in the world. There is no variety, no choice. There is only what is available, and what is available is meager. The centerpiece of your diet, the food that sustains you through the long hours of labor, is bread. But this is not the light, airy loaf you might imagine. For a peasant family, this is likely maslin bread, a heavy, dense loaf made from a mixture of whatever grains are on hand, usually rye and wheat, but sometimes barley or oats are added to stretch the flour. The bread is dark, coarse, and chewy. Its crust is thick and hard, often baked to a near blackness to ensure it keeps for as long as possible. Each bite requires a conscious effort of chewing. It is filling in a way, but it sits heavy in your stomach. To make it go further, and to soften it, you will likely dip it into a thin ale or water. The taste is earthy, slightly sour, and deeply, unchangeably monotonous. You eat this bread every single day. For a child, a small piece is broken off. For an adult facing a day of hard labor, a larger chunk is the ration. There is no butter. Butter is a valuable commodity, often rendered as part of a tax or tithe to the lord of the manor or the church. There is no jam, no sweet topping to make it more palatable. There is only the bread itself, the staff of life, and you are grateful to have it. Some mornings, especially if the bread supply is running low, breakfast might be pottage. Pottage is the other cornerstone of the medieval diet. It is, in essence, a thick soup or porridge, a one-pot meal that simmers over the hearth for hours, sometimes days.
The base is almost always oats or barley, boiled in water until it becomes a thick, glutinous mass. Into this pot goes whatever is available. This usually means vegetables from your small garden plot: onions, leeks, cabbage, peas. If you are lucky, you might have a few herbs to add some flavor, like parsley or thyme. But there is no meat. Meat is a rare luxury reserved for feast days or special occasions. The pottage is bland, a gray or brownish slurry that you eat from a simple wooden bowl with a wooden spoon. It is warm, which is its primary virtue on a cold morning, and it fills the belly, but it offers little in the way of true lasting energy. It is sustenance, not nutrition. This diet is incredibly deficient by modern standards. It is low in essential vitamins and protein. This constant, low-level malnutrition is visible on the bodies of the people. It contributes to their short stature, their bad teeth, their susceptibility to disease. The idea of 3 meals a day is a modern invention. For most peasants, there were 2: a small meal in the morning to break the fast, and a larger meal in the evening after the day's work was done. Hunger is a season. In the late summer and autumn, just after the harvest, the granaries are full, and food is, if not plentiful, at least available. This is a time of relative security. But as winter wears on and the stores dwindle, a familiar anxiety begins to creep in. By late spring, you enter what is known as the hunger gap. This is the brutal period before the new crops are ready to be harvested. The stored grain is nearly gone. The smoked and salted meats have been eaten, and the new vegetables have not yet grown. This is a time of true, desperate hunger. You might be forced to eat bread made from ground-up beans, peas, or even acorns and tree bark to make the flour last. The pottage becomes thinner, more watery. Every scrap of food is precious. Foraging becomes a critical activity. Women and children spend hours searching the woods and fields for anything edible: wild greens, roots, berries, nuts. But this is a dangerous game. Some plants are poisonous, and telling them apart requires knowledge passed down through generations. The hunger of this season is a physical pain. It makes you weak, dizzy, and irritable. It makes the hard labor of the fields feel impossible. You see the effects all around you, in the gaunt faces and listless eyes of your neighbors. This annual cycle of feast and famine, but mostly famine, defines your relationship with the world. You do not eat for pleasure. You eat to silence the pain in your stomach, to gather enough strength to survive another day. And as you chew your hard, coarse bread in the smoky gloom of your hut, you know that this brief reprieve from hunger is temporary. The hollow feeling will soon return.
Filth, fleas, and no privacy. With a meager breakfast in your belly, the day's realities press in, and none is more immediate or overwhelming than the filth. The modern concept of sanitation, of personal hygiene, is entirely absent from your world. You live in a state of grime that is almost impossible for us to truly comprehend. Let's begin with the most basic of human needs. There is no toilet in your hut. There is no bathroom, no outhouse, no running water. The toilet is a simple ceramic or wooden bucket, often called a chamber pot, kept in a corner of the single room where your entire family eats, sleeps, and lives. At night, if you need to relieve yourself, you stumble through the darkness, trying not to wake anyone, and use the pot. In the morning, it is one of the children's or the woman's chores to empty it. This means carrying the foul-smelling, sloshing pot out of the hut and simply tossing its contents into the street or onto the small rubbish heap known as a midden near your home. The streets of your village are not paved. They are rivers of mud in the rain and clouds of dust in the dry season. But they are never just mud or dust. They are a vile stew of human and animal waste, discarded food scraps, and general refuse. Pigs, chickens, and dogs, often belonging to your neighbors or roaming freely, root through this mess, eating what they can. This is the same street your children play in, the same street you walk through barefoot or in simple leather shoes every single day. The stench is overpowering and ever-present. You become so accustomed to it that you barely notice it, but it clings to your clothes, your hair, and your skin. It is the signature scent of medieval life. Inside your hut, the floor is packed earth. It is never truly clean. Spilled food, mud tracked in from outside, and waste from the animals you might bring inside during the harshest weather, like a prized hen or a newborn lamb, all become part of the floor itself. It is periodically covered with fresh rushes or straw, but this only traps the old filth beneath, creating a damp, decomposing layer that is a perfect breeding ground for insects and bacteria.
And then there are the parasites. They are a fact of life, an unavoidable part of your existence. Fleas are everywhere. They live in the straw of your bedding, in the thatch of your roof, and in the coats of the dogs and cats that might share your living space. Their bites leave angry, itching welts on your skin, which you scratch at constantly, often breaking the skin and leading to infections. Lice are even more personal. They live in the seams of your woolen clothes and in your hair. Everyone has them. Delousing is a common social activity. You might see your mother patiently picking lice from your father's hair by the fire in the evening. It's a sign of care, not of poor hygiene, because there is no alternative. The concept of regular bathing is a fantasy. Water has to be hauled by hand in heavy wooden buckets from the nearest river, stream, or village well. This is arduous work, usually done by women and children, and the water is used for the most essential tasks: cooking, drinking, and perhaps a small amount for washing hands and face. The idea of immersing your entire body in water is almost unheard of for a peasant. It would require hauling vast quantities of water and then the immense effort and fuel required to heat it. A full body wash might happen a few times a year, if at all. For the most part, you are clean if you wipe the worst of the dirt from your face and hands. This lack of hygiene has devastating consequences for health. Germs, bacteria, and disease spread with terrifying ease. A small cut or scratch contaminated by the dirt on your own skin can quickly become infected, leading to fever, sepsis, and death. Drinking water, often drawn from sources contaminated by human and animal waste, is a constant source of dysentery and other intestinal ailments that can be fatal, especially for the very young and the elderly. Privacy is another concept that does not exist for you. You are born, you live, and you will likely die in a single room, surrounded by your family. Every conversation is overheard. Every argument is public. There are no private moments, no personal space. You sleep in a heap with your siblings, you eat elbow to elbow, and you witness the most intimate and mundane moments of your parents' lives. This constant proximity, combined with the filth and the smell, creates a sensory overload that is the background noise of your entire life. There is no escape from the press of other bodies, from the smells they produce, from the sounds of their digestion and their illnesses. It is a life lived entirely in public, a life without walls or boundaries, where the line between your own body and the world around you is porous and constantly being breached by dirt, disease, and the presence of others. Getting dressed was a job. Getting dressed in the morning is not a matter of choosing an outfit that expresses your personality. It is a practical, functional and often uncomfortable process. Your wardrobe is minimal, likely consisting of 1 or 2 sets of clothes, and every item is handmade, precious, and designed for durability above all else. The fabrics you wear are a world away from the soft cottons and synthetics of the modern era. The primary material for your undergarments is linen. While linen can become soft with years of wear and washing, new linen is stiff and rough. Your innermost garment is a simple linen tunic or shift, a long shirt-like piece that serves as your underwear and pajamas. It is meant to absorb the sweat and oils from your body, protecting the more valuable woolen outer garments from getting too dirty. Washing this linen shift is easier than washing wool, but easier is a relative term. It still involves a laborious process of scrubbing with harsh soap made from animal fat and lye, beating the fabric against rocks in a cold river, and leaving it to dry and bleach in the sun. Over the linen shift, you wear your main garment, which is almost certainly made of wool. Wool is the wonder fabric of the Middle Ages. It is insulating even when wet, incredibly durable, and readily available from the sheep that are a vital part of the rural economy. But this is not soft, processed merino wool. This is coarse, heavy, and often itchy wool, spun by hand by the women in your family or village. The process of turning a sheep's fleece into a wearable garment is immense. The wool must be cleaned, carded to align the fibers, spun into thread on a simple drop spindle, and then woven into cloth on a loom. It is a task that occupies countless hours of women's lives. Your woolen tunic, or kirtle, is a simple T-shaped garment, perhaps with long sleeves. It is not tailored to your body with the precision of modern clothing. It is cut to be functional, allowing for a wide range of movement for bending, lifting, and walking. It is likely a drab, undyed color, the natural gray, brown, or off-white of the sheep's fleece. Dyes are expensive, derived from plants, minerals, or insects, and are usually reserved for the clothing of the wealthy. Your clothes tell the world who you are, a laborer.
In colder weather, you would add more layers. A woolen cloak or mantle, perhaps with a hood, is your primary defense against wind and rain. For your legs, men wear brays, which are loose linen undertrousers, and over them, woolen hose. These are not tights, but 2 separate leg coverings tied to a belt at the waist. They are notoriously difficult to keep up, and often sagged or wrinkled. Getting everything adjusted and tied in place is a morning ritual in itself. Your shoes, if you have them, are made of leather. They are simple turn shoes, made of a single piece of leather, sewn together, and then turned inside out. They offer some protection from the mud and stones, but they are not waterproof and wear out quickly. Many people, especially in the warmer months, simply go barefoot. Every piece of your clothing is valuable. A new tunic is a significant investment of time and resources. Clothes are worn until they literally fall apart. When a hole appears, it is patched. When a seam tears, it is re-sewn. Old, worn-out garments are not thrown away. They're cut up and repurposed into smaller items, patches, or even diapers for a baby. You might be wearing a tunic that contains patches from a garment once worn by your father. The physical sensation of being dressed is one of weight and restriction. The wool is heavy, especially when it gets damp. It smells of sheep and wood smoke. In the summer, it is suffocatingly hot, trapping sweat against your skin and leading to chafing and rashes. In the winter, it is your only real protection against the cold, but it is a defense that often feels inadequate. Getting dressed is not about comfort or style, it is about arming yourself for the day ahead. Each layer is a practical necessity, a shield against the elements. The roughness of the fabric against your skin is a constant reminder of the unyielding nature of your world. Your clothes are not a second skin. They are a necessary burden, a uniform of survival that you put on every single day without thought or complaint, because there is simply no other choice.
You smelled like everyone else. Terrible. Once you are dressed in your heavy, scratchy woolens, you are ready to join a world that is defined by an overwhelming assault on the senses, particularly the sense of smell. The modern obsession with eradicating all body odor would be completely alien in the medieval period. In your world, everyone stinks, and they stink in a complex and layered way. It is the simple, unavoidable truth of daily life. The smell begins with you. As we've established, you rarely, if ever, bathe. Your linen undertunic absorbs some of the sweat and grime, but it can only do so much. The smell of stale sweat is a constant companion. It emanates from your own body and from the bodies of everyone you interact with. It is so ubiquitous that it becomes the baseline, the normal scent of a human being. After a day of hard labor in the fields, this smell intensifies, a sharp, acrid odor that clings to your skin and clothes. But it is not just sweat, it is layered with other scents. The smoke from the open hearth in your hut impregnates everything. Your hair, your skin, and every thread of your clothing are saturated with the smell of burning wood or peat. It is a sharp, resinous smell that never washes out because nothing is ever truly washed. It is the perfume of poverty. Then there is the smell of your work. If you work with animals, you carry the scent of the stable, of manure and damp hay. If you are a tanner, you reek of the foul chemicals used to treat hides. If you are a blacksmith, you smell of hot metal and coal dust. Your occupation leaves its mark on you, a scent that identifies your role in the village as clearly as any uniform or ID card. Your mouth is another source of odor. Dental hygiene is non-existent. There are no toothbrushes, no toothpaste. You might occasionally chew on a twig to clean your teeth or rinse your mouth with water, but this does little to stop the inevitable decay. Most adults have teeth that are rotten, infected, or missing. The resulting bad breath, a product of rotting food particles and dental infections, is common. When someone speaks to you from a close distance, you can smell the state of their dental health.
The damp earth floor, the stale air, the chamber pot in the corner, the unwashed bodies sleeping in close quarters. Step outside and the smell of the street hits you. The rotting garbage, the animal droppings, the human waste. In the summer heat, this stench intensifies, becoming a thick, almost visible cloud that hangs over the village. People try to combat these smells, but their methods are limited and largely ineffective for the common person. The wealthy might chew on cloves or cardamom seeds to sweeten their breath, or carry a pomander, a small ball of fragrant herbs and spices, to hold to their nose in a crowd. But for you, a peasant, these are unattainable luxuries. Your only defense is a kind of sensory numbness. You learn to ignore the smells, to accept them as part of the texture of life. The concept of bad smells is different. The stench of decay is not a sign of poor hygiene to be corrected. It is simply the way things are. What is truly remarkable is that no one would single you out for smelling bad. You smell like everyone else. Your lord in his castle would smell too. He might be able to afford perfumed water for his hands and more frequent changes of linen, but he still sweats. He still lives in a world without modern plumbing, and his castles, with their garderobes, toilets that empty down the outside wall, and their great halls filled with dogs and unwashed retainers, have their own powerful stenches. Bad breath, body odor, and the general smell of an unwashed world are universal. The only time a smell might be truly remarked upon is if it is unusual. The smell of a strange sickness, or the particularly foul stench of a gangrenous wound. Those are the smells that signal danger. The everyday smell of human life, however, is just background noise. So as you stand in your hut, ready to face the day, you are enveloped in a complex tapestry of odors. The smoke in your clothes, the sweat on your skin, the sourness of your breath, the earthy smell of your home, it all combines into a single signature scent. It is the smell of survival in a world without soap, without sanitation, without shame. It is the smell of being alive in the Middle Ages.
A day in the fields. The sun is not yet fully risen. but its pale light is enough to signal the true beginning of your day. You leave the relative shelter of your hut and step into the vast, open expanse of the fields that surround your village. This is where you will spend the majority of your waking hours. This is your office, your factory, and your purpose. The life of a medieval peasant is a life of relentless, back-breaking agricultural labor. The fields are not your own. They belong to the lord of the manor. You are a serf, which means you are tied to this land. You cannot leave without the lord's permission. In exchange for a small plot of land, a tenement, to build your hut and grow your own food, you owe the lord labor. For several days a week, the exact number depends on your local customs and the season, you must work his land, the demesne, for free. Today is one of those days. You walk towards the Lord's fields, joining a silent procession of your neighbors. There is little conversation. Energy is a precious commodity, not to be wasted on idle chatter. You carry your tools with you. These are not a peasant's property. They often belong to the village community or the Lord himself, and they are rudimentary and heavy. Your primary tool might be a heavy wooden plow, pulled by a team of oxen. Guiding this plow is exhausting work. You must lean your full body weight onto the handles to force the iron plowshare to cut a deep furrow into the soil. The ground is rocky and uneven. The plow snags on rocks and roots, jolting your arms and shoulders. The oxen are slow and stubborn, and you must constantly urge them on with shouts and a goad. You walk for miles and miles, back and forth, under the watchful eye of the reeve or the steward, the Lord's appointed manager. He is there to ensure no one is slacking, that the furrows are straight, and that the work gets done. His presence is a constant pressure.
If you are not plowing, you might be harrowing, which involves dragging a heavy wooden frame with iron or wooden spikes over the plowed field to break up the clumps of earth. Or you might be sowing seed, a task that requires a rhythmic, practiced motion of scattering the precious grain from a sack tied around your waist. You must sow it evenly, not too thick, not too thin, as the success of the entire harvest depends on it. In the summer, the work changes. Haymaking is a communal effort, cutting the tall grass with long, sharp scythes. The swinging motion is rhythmic, but punishing on the back and shoulders. After cutting, the hay must be turned with wooden rakes to dry in the sun and then gathered into haystacks. Then comes the grain harvest, the most critical time of the year. The entire village mobilizes. You work from sunrise to sunset, cutting wheat, barley, or rye with a sickle. It is stooping, repetitive work. The sharp stalks scratch your arms, the sun beats down on your neck, and the dust fills your lungs. The pressure is immense, as the harvest must be brought in before it is ruined by rain. The work is governed by the sun and the seasons, not by a clock. You work as long as there is daylight. There are no scheduled breaks, no lunch hour. You might stop for a few moments to chew on your piece of bread and take a drink of water or thin ale from a water skin, but you eat while standing in the field. To rest for too long is to invite the wrath of the steward. Your body is your primary tool, and that tool is constantly being worn down. Your hands are calloused and cracked. Your back aches with a deep, permanent pain. Your muscles are strong from the labor, but they are also perpetually tired. The work is not just physically demanding, it is also monotonous. The rhythm of the seasons dictates a cycle of tasks that you have performed every year of your life, just as your father did before you, and his father before him. There is a certain comfort in this predictability, but also a profound lack of hope for anything different. This is your life, defined by the soil. You are not just working the land, you are part of it. The mud of the fields is under your fingernails and caked onto your clothes. The sun has weathered your skin. You know this land intimately, every dip, every rock, every patch of stubborn weeds. You work it, you sweat into it,
and in the end, it is where you will be buried. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, you continue your labor, one foot in front of the other, one swing of the scythe after another. There is no thought of stopping. There is only the work, and the endless, silent fields stretching out before you.
The village blacksmith and blistered hands. While the majority of the village population toils in the fields, a small number of people possess specialized skills that are essential to the community's survival. Among them, the village blacksmith holds a place of both respect and necessity. His workshop, the smithy, is a center of noise, heat, and what passes for technology in your world. The smithy is usually a dark, soot-stained building, recognizable by the constant plume of smoke rising from its forge and the rhythmic, clanging sound of hammer on anvil that echoes through the village. To step inside is to be hit by a wave of intense heat and the sharp smell of burning coal and hot iron. The blacksmith is a figure of immense strength. His arms and chest are powerfully muscled from years of swinging a heavy hammer. He is perpetually coated in a fine layer of soot and grime, his face streaked with sweat. His work is not just a job, it is a physically punishing art form. His primary task is to create and maintain the iron tools that the village depends on. The plowshares that break the earth, the sickles and scythes that harvest the crops, the axes that fell trees, the nails that hold buildings together. All of these come from his forge. He also shoes the Lord's horses and the village's precious oxen, a skilled and dangerous job that requires both strength and a calm hand. The process is mesmerizing to watch. The smith uses long tongs to pull a piece of raw iron from the heart of the forge, where it glows with a blinding yellow-white heat. He places it on the anvil and, with a practiced rhythm, begins to shape it. The hammer falls with a deafening clang, sending a shower of bright orange sparks into the air. He works quickly, turning and shaping the metal before it cools and hardens. He might have an apprentice, often a young boy, whose job is to work the bellows, a large accordion-like device that pumps air into the forge to keep the coals burning at an incredibly high temperature. It is strenuous, repetitive work, but it is the lifeblood of the smithy. Being a skilled artisan like a blacksmith offers a life slightly different from that of a field laborer. You might have a bit more social standing, your work is valued, and you are paid for your services, often in goods, a share of the grain, a chicken, or ale, rather than coin, which is scarce. However, this life is far from easy. The dangers are constant and severe. The most obvious danger is fire. The smithy, with its open forge and flammable materials, is a constant fire hazard. A stray spark could easily ignite the thatched roof of a nearby building. Burns are an accepted part of the job. The smith's hands and arms are a roadmap of scars from hot metal and flying sparks. A serious burn could easily become infected in this unhygienic world, leading to a slow and agonizing death. The intense heat and physical exertion can lead to heat stroke in the summer. The constant loud noise would, over time, lead to permanent hearing damage. And the smoke and coal dust you inhale every day would cause chronic respiratory problems. Even simple jobs are fraught with risk. Imagine being the person who brings a broken tool to be mended. You stand in the smithy, watching the master at work. The air is thick and hard to breathe. The noise is overwhelming. You see the raw power required to shape metal, the sweat pouring from the smith's brow. Your own hands are a testament to the world of labor. They are not the hands of an office worker. They are thick with calluses from gripping a wooden plow handle or a scythe. The skin is rough, cracked, and permanently stained with dirt. Blisters are a common occurrence. A new tool or a particularly long day of work can raise painful, fluid-filled sacs on your palms. If they break, they leave an open wound, a raw patch of skin that stings with every touch. In a world without antiseptic or bandages, such an open wound is an invitation for infection. A small blister, ignored or improperly cared for, could lead to a festering sore that makes it impossible to work.
And if you cannot work, your family cannot eat. Whether you are the blacksmith with his specialized skill or the farmer with his simple tools, your hands tell the story of your life. They are blistered, scarred, and calloused. They are the instruments of your survival, and the constant risk of injury to them is a fear that hangs over every single day.
Women's work was never done. While the men are in the fields or the smithy, engaged in the labor that is most visible, the women are engaged in a different, but equally relentless world of work. The phrase women's work in the Middle Ages does not imply a lighter load. It describes a sphere of endless, concurrent tasks that are essential for the survival of the family and the functioning of the household. A woman's work begins before the sun rises and ends long after the sun has set. There is no distinction between a weekday and a weekend, no concept of a day off. Her domain is the hut and its immediate surroundings, and it is a domain of constant motion. After waking in the cold and dark, one of her first tasks is to tend to the fire, coaxing the embers back to life. She is the one who prepares the meager morning meal, cutting the bread, warming the pottage. While the men and older boys leave for the fields, her day of multitasking begins. One of the most physically demanding jobs is fetching water. This is not a simple matter of turning on a tap. She must take heavy wooden buckets to the nearest water source, a well, a river, or a stream, which could be a significant walk from her home. She then has to haul the full sloshing buckets back. This water is for everything: drinking, cooking, and the very limited washing that gets done. She will make this trip multiple times a day in all weather. The strain on her back, shoulders, and arms is immense. Food preparation is another colossal task. If the family has its own grain from its small plot, it must be ground into flour. This is not done at a large water mill, which is usually owned by the lord and requires a fee to use. For daily needs, she uses a quern stone, two heavy circular stones, one on top of the other. She pours the grain into a hole in the top stone and then rotates it by hand, a grueling, repetitive motion that grinds the grain into coarse flour. It takes hours of work to produce enough flour for a single family's bread. Then she must knead the heavy dough and bake it, either in a communal village oven, which also requires a fee, or as a flatbread on a griddle over her own hearth. She is also responsible for the family's small garden plot, the curtilage, usually located right next to the hut. Here she cultivates the vegetables that form the basis of the family's pottage: onions, leeks, cabbages, peas, and beans. She weeds, waters, and protects the plants from pests. She also tends to the family's animals. Most peasant families would have a few chickens for eggs and perhaps a pig or a goat. It is her job to feed them, ensure they have water, and collect the eggs. The pig, in particular, is a vital source of future food, and its health is her responsibility. Clothing is another of her domains. She is the one who spins the wool or flax into thread, a task that can be done while walking or watching children. She then weaves the thread into cloth on a simple loom, a slow and painstaking process. And she is the one who sews the family's garments by hand and mends them endlessly, patching holes and reinforcing seams to make them last as long as possible. And all of this is done while also being the primary caregiver for the children. She watches over the toddlers, making sure they don't wander into the fire or the street. She breastfeeds the infants. She teaches the older girls the skills they will need to run their own households one day: spinning, cooking, gardening. Her work is never a single task. She is always doing at least two things at once: stirring the pottage while rocking a baby, spinning thread while walking to the well, weeding the garden while keeping an eye on a wandering chicken. There is no rest, no moment of quiet contemplation. Her labor is less visible than the man's work in the fields, but it is just as physically demanding and arguably more mentally exhausting due to its fragmented and ceaseless nature. She receives no praise for this work. It is simply expected. It is the invisible engine that keeps the family unit running. Without her relentless effort, there would be no food on the table, no water to drink, no clothes to wear, and no next generation to carry on the cycle of labor. Her work is not just work. It is the fragile thread that holds their world together. Children grew up fast. Childhood, as we understand it, a protected, nurturing period of play and education, is a luxury that does not exist in your world. For a medieval peasant, childhood is a brief, perilous apprenticeship for a life of hard labor. From the moment you were born, your chances of survival are slim. High infant mortality rates mean that many children do not live to see their first birthday. Disease, malnutrition, and simple accidents claim a terrifying number of young lives. If you do survive these early years, your life quickly becomes one of responsibility. By the age of 3 or 4, you're expected to contribute in small ways. You might be tasked with chasing chickens out of the garden, gathering firewood, or watching an even younger sibling for a few moments. Play exists, but it is not the focus of your day. You might play with simple toys, a carved wooden animal, a ball made of rags. But these moments of leisure are brief. Your play often mimics the work of adults, a form of practice for the life that awaits you. By the age of 7, your apprenticeship begins in earnest. The concept of formal education, of learning to read and write, is completely out of reach. Reading is a skill for priests and nobles. Your education is a practical one, learning the tasks you'll perform for the rest of your life. A young boy of 7 or 8 will join his father in the fields. He will start with simple tasks, scaring crows away from the newly sown seeds, leading the oxen, or carrying water. As he grows stronger, his tasks become more demanding. He learns to handle the tools, to understand the rhythms of the seasons, and to endure the long hours of labor. He is not treated with any special consideration due to his age. He is expected to work as hard as his small body allows, and he learns quickly that complaining is useless. A young girl, by the same age, is her mother's shadow. She learns to spin thread, to churn butter, to cook, and to care for younger children. She helps with the weeding in the garden, fetches water from the well, and learns the complex art of managing a household with virtually no resources. Her hands, like her brother's, become calloused and capable at a young age.
By the age of 12 or 13, you are considered a young adult. Your period of childhood is officially over. A boy is now capable of doing most of the work of a full-grown man in the fields. A girl is capable of running a household. This is also the age when thoughts turn to marriage. Marriages among the peasantry are not about romantic love. They are practical alliances between families. A marriage is a way to secure land, to combine resources, and to ensure the continuation of the family line. A girl might be married as young as 12 or 14, often to a man much older than her. She will leave her own family to join her husband's, and she will be expected to start bearing children almost immediately. The transition from child to adult is abrupt and unsentimental. There is no rebellious teenage phase. There is no time for self-discovery. Your identity is determined for you by your gender, your family, and your station in life. You are a laborer, a future parent, a cog in the great machine of manorial life. This accelerated path to adulthood has a profound psychological effect. You learn to suppress your emotions, to endure hardship without complaint, and to find satisfaction in the simple completion of a task. The world is presented to you as a place of work and duty, not of opportunity and choice. Fear is a constant teacher. You learn to fear the Lord's steward, to fear hunger, to fear injury. You see death and hardship all around you, and you learn that life is fragile and precarious. Yet, this harsh upbringing also instills a remarkable resilience. You learn to be self-sufficient, capable, and tough. You understand the value of hard work because you see its direct results in the food on your table. You grow up fast because you have to. The world does not wait for you to be ready. It demands your strength, your labor, and your obedience from a very young age. The child you were at 7 is a distant memory by the time you were 14, replaced by a young adult who has already accepted the unchangeable reality of their life's path.
The fear of injury. In a life defined by physical labor, your body is your most important asset. It is your only tool, your only source of income, your only means of survival. And the greatest, most persistent fear that shadows your every move is the fear of injury. An accident that might be a minor inconvenience in the modern world is a potential death sentence for you. Medical knowledge is rudimentary and based more on superstition and tradition than on science. There is no understanding of germs, infection, or proper wound care. The village has no doctor. You might have a wise woman or a barber surgeon in a nearby town who can perform basic procedures, but their methods are often brutal and ineffective. Your primary recourse in the face of injury is prayer and hope. Imagine you are working in the fields, swinging a heavy scythe to cut hay. Your foot slips on a patch of wet grass, and the razor-sharp blade slices deeply into your leg. The initial shock is followed by searing pain. Blood pours from the wound, soaking your woolen hose and staining the grass. Your fellow workers rush to help. They might try to stop the bleeding by packing the wound with cobwebs, dung, or moss, materials they believe have healing properties, which are, in reality, teeming with bacteria. The wound is then bound tightly with a strip of dirty linen. You are carried back to your hut, your leg throbbing with a pain you have never experienced before. There are no painkillers, no anesthetics. You must simply endure it. Over the next few days, you lie on your straw pallet, helpless. The area around the wound becomes red, swollen, and hot to the touch. This is the beginning of an infection. A fever sets in. You alternate between shivering chills and bouts of sweating. The pain becomes a constant, consuming fire. Pus, a thick, foul-smelling liquid, begins to seep from the wound. Your family can do nothing but watch, pray, and offer you sips of water.
The infection spreads through your bloodstream, a condition we would call sepsis. You become delirious, your mind filled with nightmarish visions. In a few days, or perhaps a week of unrelenting agony, you die, all from a single cut. This is a common story. A simple fracture is just as dangerous. If you fall from a ladder and break your leg, there is no one who can set the bone properly. It might be splinted with pieces of wood and cloth, but if the break is severe, the bones will not heal correctly. You could be left with a permanently crippled limb, unable to perform the labor required to feed yourself. You would become a burden on your family, another mouth to feed without contributing. In a world where every person's labor is critical, being disabled is a catastrophic fate. Even smaller injuries carry disproportionate risks. A deep splinter from a wooden tool, a nail puncture from stepping on a discarded board, a serious burn from the cooking fire. Any break in the skin is a gateway for deadly infection. Tetanus, which we now prevent with a simple vaccine, is a terrifying and common killer, causing agonizing muscle spasms and lockjaw. This constant threat of injury informs the way you work. You move with a deliberate, careful slowness. You learn to respect your tools, to understand their dangers. But accidents happen. Fatigue, a moment of distraction, or simple bad luck can change your life forever. This fear is a heavy psychological burden. It is the reason you are cautious, the reason you avoid unnecessary risks. It is a fear that is passed down through generations. You have seen what happens to people who get hurt. You have seen your neighbors die from what started as a small wound. You have seen men, once strong and capable, reduced to begging because of a lame leg. So as you work, a part of your mind is always vigilant, always aware of the precariousness of your physical well-being. Your health is the thin line between survival and starvation, between being a productive member of your family and becoming a source of their ruin. It is a treasure you guard with every careful step you take. The Lord's manor, and your place below it. Your world is small, confined to the village and the fields that surround it, but looming over this world, both literally and figuratively, is the Lord's manor house, or, if he is particularly powerful, his castle. This building is the physical embodiment of the power structure that dictates every aspect of your life. It might be a large stone house, fortified and imposing, or a true stone castle with walls and a moat. Compared to your small, dark wattle and daub hut, it is a palace. It represents a world of wealth, power, and privilege that is utterly beyond your reach. You're a peasant, a serf, and you exist at the very bottom of a rigid and unchangeable social hierarchy. This is not just an idea, it is a lived reality that shapes every interaction. At the top is the king, a distant and almost mythical figure. Below him are the great nobles, and below them the local lord, who controls your land and your life. You are his property, as much a part of the manor as the fields and the livestock. This hierarchy is reinforced in countless daily ways. When the lord or a member of his family rides through the village, you are expected to stop what you are doing, bow your head, and lower your eyes. You do not speak to him unless spoken to. Your posture, your gaze, your very presence must communicate deference and submission. You refer to him as my lord, and his wife as my lady. These are not mere courtesies, they are acknowledgments of his absolute authority over you. The Lord owns the land you work, the mill where you must grind your grain for a fee, the oven where you must bake your bread for a fee, and the forest where you are forbidden to hunt. The deer, boar, and even rabbits in the woods are the Lord's property. To be caught poaching is to risk severe punishment, mutilation, or even death. You are allowed to gather fallen wood for your fire, but you cannot cut down a living tree. Every resource is controlled, and your access to it is granted or denied at the Lord's whim.
The Lord's steward, or reeve, acts as his agent, the enforcer of his will. He is the one who oversees your labor on the domain lands, collects your taxes and tithes, and presides over the manor court. He is often a fellow peasant who has risen to a position of some authority, and he is frequently disliked and feared, seen as a collaborator with the power that oppresses you. You live under a system of obligations. You owe the Lord labor service, the work you do on his fields. You also owe him rent for your small plot of land, paid not in scarce coin, but in produce, a share of your grain, a certain number of eggs, a chicken on a feast day. There are also special taxes, or tallage, which the Lord can levy at will, especially if he needs to raise money for a war or a daughter's dowry. These demands are not negotiable. To refuse them is to invite punishment. The Lord's power extends even to the most personal aspects of your life. In many places, you must seek the Lord's permission to have your daughter married, and you often have to pay a fee called a merchant for the privilege. If you die, your best animal or a portion of your meager possessions may be claimed by the Lord as a heriot, a form of inheritance tax. This system is justified by the concept of feudal obligation. In theory, the Lord offers you protection. His knights and soldiers are meant to defend you from outside invaders or roving bandits. In reality, this protection is often abstract, while the daily burden of your obligations is very real. You rarely see the Lord, but you feel the weight of his authority every single day. It is in the bread you cannot afford to bake in his oven, the meat you cannot hunt in his forest, and the sweat you expend on his fields. Your life is a constant negotiation with a power that is absolute and inescapable. You are not a free individual. You are a part of a collective, a human resource belonging to the manor. And as you look up at the stone walls of his house, you are reminded, with every glance, of your unchangeable place in the world. You are below, and he is above.
Justice was brutal and public. In a world governed by a rigid hierarchy, the concept of justice is not about fairness or rehabilitation. It is about maintaining order and reinforcing the power of the ruling class. Justice in your village is swift, brutal, and intensely public. It is a form of theater designed to instill fear and ensure compliance. Minor disputes between villagers, arguments over land boundaries, or accusations of theft are handled in the manor court, presided over by the Lord's steward. This is not a court with lawyers and juries. It is a gathering of the community, where accusations are made, witnesses, if any, are heard, and the steward delivers a judgment. Punishments for minor offenses are often fines, paid in goods or produce, or public humiliation. A common punishment is to be placed in the stocks, or the pillory. These wooden contraptions, located in the center of the village, would hold your head, hands, or feet, immobilizing you for hours or even days. You are a target for public scorn. People might throw rotten vegetables, mud, or animal dung at you. They will mock you and insult you. The shame is as much a part of the punishment as the physical discomfort.
For more serious crimes, the punishments are terrifyingly severe. The legal system operates on the principle of an eye for an eye, and the penalties are designed to be a visceral deterrent. If you are caught stealing from the Lord, poaching a deer from his forest, or taking grain from his stores, the punishment is not a simple fine. You might be branded on the cheek with a hot iron, marking you for life as a thief. Your hand might be cut off, a permanent, visible reminder of your crime, and a sentence to a life of begging, as you can no longer work effectively. Public executions are a common and well-attended event. They are not hidden away in a prison. They are held in the village square or on a hill overlooking the town for everyone to see. A hanging is a spectacle. The condemned is paraded through the streets, sometimes tied to a cart and whipped along the way. A priest might walk alongside, urging them to confess their sins. The entire community, men, women, and children, gathers to watch. The actual hanging is a slow, agonizing process. There is no long drop to break the neck. The person is simply hoisted into the air or pushed from a ladder, and they die slowly from strangulation, their body convulsing for several minutes.
Church bells and sin. While the Lord's manor represents the temporal power that governs your body, another, even more powerful institution governs your soul, the church. In the medieval world, the church is not just a place of worship. It is an all-encompassing force that permeates every aspect of your existence. Your life is bookended by its rituals, from the baptism that welcomes you into the Christian world shortly after birth to the last rites that prepare you for death. The physical center of this spiritual life is the village church. It is likely the only stone building in your village, aside from the manor house. Its presence is a constant, visible reminder of God's authority. Its bells are the soundtrack of your life. They ring to call you to Mass, to mark the hours of the day for prayer, the canonical hours, to celebrate weddings, and to toll mournfully for funerals. The sound of the church bell is one of the few things that can be heard by everyone, a unifying rhythm for the entire community. Your understanding of the world is shaped entirely by the teachings of the church. You cannot read the Bible for yourself. Literacy is for the clergy. Your knowledge of God, Jesus, the saints, and the devil comes from the sermons of your parish priest, from the stained glass windows, if your church is wealthy enough to have them, and from the religious plays performed on feast days. The world, as you are taught, is a battlefield between the forces of good and evil. God and his angels are watching over you, but so are Satan and his demons, who are constantly trying to tempt you into sin. Life on earth is a brief, painful trial. It is a test of your faith and your obedience. The real prize is not happiness in this life, which is seen as a valley of tears,
but eternal salvation in the next. The alternative is an eternity of unimaginable torment in the fires of hell, a place described in graphic and terrifying detail by your priest.
This focus on the afterlife dominates your moral and psychological landscape. The fear of sin is profound. A sin is not just a moral failing. It is an offense against God that stains your soul and jeopardizes your salvation. You are taught to be vigilant against the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Confession to the priest is a vital sacrament. You must confess your sins to him, and he, as God's representative on earth, has the power to grant you absolution, usually after prescribing a penance, a series of prayers, fasting, or sometimes a pilgrimage to a holy shrine. The church is also a source of community and comfort. The religious calendar provides the structure for your year, breaking up the monotony of labor with holy days and festivals. Christmas, Easter, and the various saints' days are occasions for celebration, for a temporary reprieve from work, for feasting, if food is available, and for communal gatherings. These festivals are a vital social glue, binding the community together in shared ritual and belief. However, the church's power is not purely spiritual. It is also a massive economic and political institution. The church is a major landowner, and it demands its own form of tax, the tithe. You're required to give 1/10 of all your produce, your grain, your livestock, your vegetables, to the church. This is not a voluntary donation, it is a mandatory obligation, and failing to pay it is considered a grave sin. The parish priest is a powerful figure in the village. He is often one of the few literate people, and he holds the keys to your eternal fate. While many priests are pious and dedicated, some are corrupt or neglectful, more interested in their own comfort than in the spiritual well-being of their flock. But you have no choice but to rely on him. He is your only connection to God, your only guide through the treacherous landscape of sin and salvation. Your faith is a mixture of genuine piety, deep-seated fear, and social obligation. It offers you a framework for understanding your suffering. It is a test from God, and it gives you a glimmer of hope for a better life after death. But it also adds another layer of fear and obligation to a life that is already heavy with both. The tolling of the church bell is both a comfort and a warning, a reminder that your every action is being watched, judged, and recorded for a final, terrifying reckoning.
Tithes, taxes, and starvation. Your life as a peasant is a constant struggle to produce enough food to survive. But you are not just feeding your own family. A significant portion of everything you produce is taken from you by the 2 great powers that rule your life, your Lord and the Church. This system of extraction ensures that you are kept in a state of perpetual poverty, living on the very edge of subsistence. The most significant secular obligation is the rent you owe your Lord for the small piece of land your hut sits on. This is rarely paid in coin, as money is a rare commodity for a peasant. Instead, you pay in kind. This means a fixed amount of the grain you harvest from your personal strips of land must be given to the Lord. You might also owe him a certain number of chickens, dozens of eggs, or a piglet each year. These goods are taken to the Lord's storehouses to feed his family, his servants, and his soldiers. What is left for you is often barely enough to get your own family through the winter.
On top of this rent, there are the labor services you owe, the days you spend working the Lord's personal fields for free. All the produce from these fields goes directly to the Lord. So, you are spending a significant portion of your working week cultivating food that you will never eat. Then, there are the various fees and fines of the manor. If you need to grind your grain, you must use the Lord's mill, and the miller will take a portion of your flour as payment, the mulcher. This was a common source of resentment, as millers were notoriously accused of taking more than their fair share. If you want to bake your bread in an oven, you must use the Lord's communal oven, which also requires a fee. These are not optional services. You are often forbidden from owning your own cornstone or building your own oven, forcing you into this system of dependency. Parallel to the Lord's demands are the demands of the church. The tithe is a religious obligation, a tax of 10% on everything you produce. This is not 10% of your surplus, it is 10% of your gross production. Before you can even set aside grain to feed your family or to use as seed for the next planting season, the church takes its tenth. This applies to everything. 1 out of every 10 sheaves of wheat, 1 out of every 10 lambs born, 1 out of every 10 eggs laid. The collection of the tithe is often a contentious event, overseen by the priest or a church official.
These layers of obligation create a crushing economic pressure. Imagine you have a good harvest. You and your family have worked tirelessly and the fields have produced 100 bushels of wheat. It feels like a fortune. But then the deductions begin. 10 bushels go to the church as a tithe. Perhaps another 20 or 30 go to the Lord as rent. Suddenly, your 100 bushels have been reduced to 60. From that, you must set aside enough seed for next year's crop, or you will starve the following year. What remains is what your family has to live on for the next 12 months. Now, imagine a bad harvest. A drought or a wet summer has stunted the crops. You only manage to harvest 50 bushels. The obligations, however, do not change. The church still demands its tithe, 5 bushels. The Lord still demands his rent. After these are paid, you might be left with almost nothing. This is how famine begins. It is not just a matter of poor weather. It is a structural problem. The system is designed to extract the maximum amount of wealth from the peasantry, leaving them with no cushion, no savings, and no way to weather a crisis.
You live in a state of constant food insecurity. The decisions you make are not about getting ahead. They are about not falling behind into starvation. You watch your children, and you see the effects of this constant want in their thin bodies and hungry eyes. The resentment you feel towards the Lord's bailiff and the tithe collector is a quiet, simmering anger, but it is an anger you dare not express. To protest is to risk being fined, whipped, or thrown off your land entirely, which is a death sentence. You learn to be cunning, to hide a portion of your produce if you can, to underestimate your yield. But the system is designed to prevent this. The officials are vigilant. So you pay what is demanded and you pray that what is left will be enough. You give up the food from your own mouth to feed your Lord's table and to build magnificent cathedrals in distant cities. Your hunger is the price of their power.
War meant you'd lose everything. To the lords and kings, war is a matter of politics, honor, and territory. It is a game playing with armies on a distant field. But for you, a peasant, war is not a glorious adventure. It is the ultimate catastrophe, a force of nature that sweeps through your life and destroys everything you have. When armies are on the move, they do not carry their own supplies. An army marches on its stomach, and its stomach is fed by the countryside it passes through. Whether the soldiers are friendly, belonging to your own king, or hostile, the result for you is often the same. They are a locust swarm, consuming everything in their path. A troop of soldiers arriving in your village is a terrifying sight. They will demand food, and they will not take no for an answer. They will empty your meager grain stores, slaughter your precious livestock, the pig you were fattening for winter, your chickens, your goat, and drink all your ale. To resist is to be beaten or killed. But the theft of food is often just the beginning.
The soldiers far from home and operating outside the normal rules of society are a law unto themselves. Violence is their trade, and they bring it with them. They will take whatever they want. Your home will be ransacked for anything of value, though you have little. The women in your village are in terrible danger. Rape is a common and brutal tool of war, an act of domination and terror. There is no one to protect you. The Lord who's supposed to offer you protection is likely either away at the war himself or hiding in his fortified castle, leaving you to fend for yourself. If your village is in a contested area or belongs to an enemy lord, its fate is even worse. The standard practice of medieval warfare is the chevauchée, a brutal raid designed to terrorize the population and destroy the enemy's economic resources. The soldiers will not just take your food, they will systematically destroy your ability to live. They will set fire to your fields of ripe grain, chop down your fruit trees, and burn your houses to the ground. They will poison your well.
You and your family will be forced to flee with nothing but the clothes on your backs, becoming refugees in your own land. You will join a stream of displaced people, seeking shelter in the woods or trying to make your way to a walled town that might offer some safety. But even if you survive the initial raid, the aftermath is a slow-motion disaster. With your home destroyed, your tools gone, your livestock killed, and your fields burned, you have no way to feed yourself. The raid is followed by famine. Starvation and disease will sweep through the refugee population, killing many of those who survived the initial violence. For a peasant, the passage of an army is like a biblical plague. It erases years of hard work in a matter of hours. It destroys not just your present, but your future. The carefully saved seed for next year's planting is gone. The animals that provide milk, eggs, and future offspring are gone. The home that offered your only shelter is a pile of smoking ash. Even the recruitment for war is a threat. The Lord may be required to send a certain number of men to fight for the king. While you, as a serf, are less likely to be a professional soldier, you might be conscripted as a foot soldier or an archer. This is not an opportunity, it is a death sentence. You are torn from your family and your land, given rudimentary training and equipment, and marched off to a battle you do not understand. Your chances of returning are slim. You are more likely to die from disease in an army camp than from a sword in battle. And if you die, your family is left without a primary laborer, pushing them even closer to starvation. War, for you, has no upside. There is no glory, no spoils, no honor. It is a terrifying, arbitrary force that underscores the complete fragility of your existence. Your life is built on a knife's edge, and the tramp of marching feet is the sound of that edge crumbling beneath you.
A toothache could kill you. In a world filled with the dramatic dangers of famine, war, and plague, it is easy to overlook the mundane agonies that can be just as deadly. One of the most common and feared of these is the toothache. In an era without dentistry, without anesthetics, and without any understanding of oral hygiene, a problem with your teeth is not a minor inconvenience. It is a gateway to excruciating pain and a potentially slow, agonizing death. Your diet, though low in sugar, is coarse and gritty. The stone-ground flour used for your bread contains tiny particles of sand and rock from the millstones. This grit acts like sandpaper, wearing down the enamel of your teeth over the years. Your teeth are also weakened by a diet deficient in essential vitamins and minerals. Cracks and cavities are almost inevitable. When a cavity forms, there is no way to fill it. It simply grows larger and deeper over time, exposing the sensitive pulp and nerve inside. The first sign is a dull ache, a sensitivity to hot or cold. But soon it progresses into a throbbing, relentless pain that radiates through your jaw and up into your head. It is a pain that consumes your every waking moment. You cannot eat because the pressure of chewing is unbearable. You cannot sleep because the pain intensifies when you lie down. There are no painkillers like aspirin or ibuprofen. You might try folk remedies, chewing on a certain herb, pressing a poultice of plants to your cheek, or rinsing your mouth with salt water. These offer, at best, a fleeting moment of relief. The pain always returns, often worse than before. As the decay reaches the nerve, the tooth becomes infected. An abscess forms at the root, a pocket of pus that creates immense pressure and swelling in your jaw. Your face becomes distorted, swollen on one side. You develop a fever. The pain is now a white-hot, blinding agony.
Your only option for treatment is extraction, and this is a terrifying prospect. The person who performs this is not a trained dentist. It is likely the village blacksmith, who has the strongest arms and the best pliers, or a traveling barber surgeon. There is no anesthetic. You are held down by several people while the dentist uses a crude iron tool, a pelican, to wrench the tooth from its socket. The force required is immense. Sometimes the tooth shatters, leaving fragments of the root behind. Sometimes a piece of the jawbone breaks with it. The pain is indescribable, a brutal, violent assault on your body. You are fully conscious for the entire ordeal. If the extraction is successful and the entire tooth and root are removed, you might eventually recover, minus one tooth. But if fragments are left behind, or if the socket becomes infected, which is highly likely given the unhygienic conditions, your ordeal is far from over. The infection can spread from the abscessed tooth into your jawbone, a condition called osteomyelitis. Or it can enter your bloodstream, leading to sepsis. The bacteria travel throughout your body, poisoning you from within. You become delirious with fever, your body racked with pain. Slowly, over days or weeks, your organs begin to shut down. Your family can only watch, helpless as you waste away. All of this from a single rotten tooth. This is why skeletal remains from the medieval period so often show evidence of horrific dental problems, multiple abscesses, lost teeth, and worn-down enamel. It was a universal suffering. Everyone, from the poorest peasant to the wealthiest king, feared the toothache. It was a constant, ticking clock of pain and potential death, a reminder that in this world, even the smallest parts of your body could betray you and lead you to a terrible end.
The plague changed everything. For centuries, your world has been defined by a familiar set of hardships: hunger, war, the whims of your lord. But in the middle of the 14th century, a new and unimaginable terror arrives. It comes from the east, a silent, invisible enemy that travels along the trade routes, carried by the fleas on the backs of rats. It is the Black Death, the great pestilence, and it will not just change your world, it will shatter it. The first you hear of it are rumors, tales from traveling merchants or pilgrims of a horrifying disease that is depopulating entire cities in distant lands. But soon, the rumors become reality. It arrives in a nearby port town, and from there it begins its relentless march across the countryside. One day, a neighbor falls ill. It starts with a high fever, chills, and vomiting. Then the telltale signs appear, the buboes. These are large, painful swellings in the lymph nodes of the groin, armpits, or neck. They grow to the size of an egg or an apple, and they turn black as the tissue inside dies. The victim is in excruciating pain, often delirious and racked with spasms. Death usually follows within a few days. This is the bubonic plague. There is another, even deadlier form, the pneumonic plague, which infects the lungs and is spread through coughing directly from person to person. And a third, the septicemic plague, which infects the bloodstream and is almost 100% fatal, often killing within hours. No one understands what causes it. Is it a punishment from God for the sins of mankind? Is it a poison in the air, a miasma? Is it caused by the alignment of the planets?
Panic and fear grip your village. The bonds of community, forged over centuries, begin to break down. People become terrified of each other. A simple cough is enough to cause panic. Families abandon their own sick members, leaving them to die alone for fear of catching the disease. Priests, who are supposed to offer comfort and last rites, are often among the first to die as they minister to the sick. Soon, there is no one left to bury the dead.
The familiar sound of the church bell tolling for a funeral, once a solemn and individual event, is replaced by an eerie silence. There are too many dead to mark each passing. Bodies are left in houses or thrown into the street. Eventually, communal plague pits are dug, massive trenches where bodies are piled unceremoniously, one on top of the other. The village becomes a ghost town. You see houses with the doors left open, the inhabitants all dead inside. The fields are untended, the livestock wander aimlessly, the social order completely collapses. The reeve is dead, the priest is dead, half your neighbors are dead. In the space of a few months, between a third and a half of the entire population of Europe will be wiped out. The psychological toll is immense. You live in a state of constant, paralyzing fear. Every morning you wake up and check your own body for the dreaded buboes. You look at your children, your spouse, and you wonder who will be next. The world seems to be ending. But if you are one of the lucky ones, you survive. And when the first wave of the plague finally recedes, you emerge into a new and profoundly altered world. The sheer scale of the death has turned the old order upside down. With so many people gone, labor is suddenly scarce. For the first time in centuries, the peasant has some bargaining power. Lords are desperate for workers to till their fields. You may be able to demand higher wages or to be released from your serfdom and become a free tenant. The old system of obligations begins to crumble. The Black Death is an apocalyptic event, a tragedy of unimaginable scale. It leaves a deep, dark scar on the consciousness of a generation. But in its devastating wake, it also plants the seeds of a new society. The world you knew is gone forever, drowned in a sea of death. The future is uncertain and terrifying, but it also holds a flicker of possibility, a chance for change that would have been unthinkable before the pestilence came. Pregnancy was dangerous. For a woman in the Middle Ages, the ability to bear children is her primary social function and a source of immense pressure. A fruitful marriage is a successful one. A barren marriage is a curse. Yet the process of pregnancy and childbirth, which should be a time of hope, is one of the most dangerous periods of her life. It is a journey into a valley of shadow from which she and her child may not emerge. From the moment she knows she is pregnant, a woman lives with a mixture of anticipation and fear. There is no prenatal care, no doctor to monitor her health or the baby's development. Her knowledge of pregnancy comes from the collective wisdom of the other women in her village, a mixture of practical advice, folk remedies, and superstition. She continues with her grueling daily work, hauling water, grinding grain, working in the fields for as long as she is physically able. There is no concept of maternity leave. Her labor is needed until the moment the birth begins. When her labor starts, she is not taken to a sterile hospital. The birth takes place in her own dark, drafty hut, on the same straw pallet where she sleeps. She is attended not by a doctor, but by a local midwife and the other women of her family and village. The midwife is a figure of immense importance, her skills passed down through generations. She is experienced and practical, but her knowledge is limited. She has no understanding of germ theory. She does not wash her hands before assisting with the birth. The risk of infection is enormous. A normal birth is a difficult and painful ordeal, but a complicated one is often a death sentence. If the baby is in a breech position, feet first, or is too large to pass through the birth canal, the midwife has few options. She may try to manually turn the baby, a painful and dangerous procedure, but if the baby becomes stuck, the labor can go on for days. The woman becomes exhausted, dehydrated, and is at high risk of her uterus rupturing. In most cases of obstructed labor, both mother and child will die.
There are no C-sections for a living mother. The procedure is only performed on a dead or dying woman in a desperate attempt to save the child for baptism. There are no forceps to assist with a difficult delivery. There are no painkillers to ease the agony. The woman must rely on her own strength, on the encouragement of the women around her, and on prayer. If the baby is successfully delivered, the danger is not over. The third stage of labor, the delivery of the placenta, is fraught with risk. If the placenta does not detach properly, or if fragments of it are left in the uterus, the woman can suffer a massive hemorrhage. The midwife might try to pull it out, a practice that can cause tearing and further bleeding. In a world with no blood transfusions, a postpartum hemorrhage is almost always fatal. The woman will simply bleed to death on her birthing bed. Another major killer is childbed fever, or puerperal sepsis. This is a bacterial infection of the uterus introduced during or after the birth by unclean hands or instruments. A day or two after giving birth, the new mother develops a high fever, chills, and severe abdominal pain. She becomes weak and delirious, and death usually follows within a week. The tragedy is that she has survived the birth, her baby is alive, but she is killed by an invisible enemy she cannot fight. The statistics are grim. A woman's lifetime risk of dying in childbirth is shockingly high. It is estimated that for every 100 live births, 1 or 2 mothers would die. Since a woman might have many pregnancies in her lifetime, her cumulative risk was enormous. Every pregnancy is a roll of the dice. She has seen her own mother, sisters, or neighbors die in childbirth. She knows the risks intimately. So while a successful birth is a cause for great celebration, the joy is always tempered by the memory of those who were lost and by the knowledge that she will have to face this same mortal peril again and again. Disease was constant. Beyond the dramatic epidemics like the plague and the acute dangers of childbirth and injury, your life is a constant, low-level battle against a host of other diseases and ailments. Your body is a landscape of chronic suffering, a state of being that is so normal you barely register it as sickness. You are never truly, fully healthy by modern standards. The most common afflictions are parasites. You are almost certainly infested with intestinal worms, such as roundworm and tapeworm, which you acquire from contaminated food and water. These parasites rob your body of precious nutrients, contributing to your chronic malnutrition and weakness. They cause abdominal pain, digestive problems, and a general feeling of being unwell that is simply your normal state. The filth you live in ensures that your skin is a battleground. Scabies, an infestation of mites that burrow under the skin, causes an intense, maddening itch. Scratching leads to open sores, which then become infected with bacteria. Fungal infections like ringworm are common, creating red, scaly patches on your skin and scalp. Your lungs are under constant assault. The smoky air of your hut, filled with soot from the open hearth, irritates your respiratory system from infancy. This leads to chronic bronchitis, a persistent winter cough, and a high susceptibility to pneumonia, which is a common cause of death especially for the elderly and the very young. Your diet, lacking in fresh fruits and vegetables for much of the year, leads to vitamin deficiencies. Scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, is not just a disease of sailors. It can affect inland populations during the long winter months, causing lethargy, bleeding gums, and joint pain. Rickets, a softening of the bones in children due to a lack of vitamin D and calcium, leads to bowed legs and other skeletal deformities.
Many common infectious diseases that we now prevent with vaccines are a constant threat. Measles, mumps, and whooping cough sweep through villages, killing a significant number of children. Smallpox is a particularly feared disease, highly contagious and often fatal. Those who survive are left with deep, pitted scars on their faces and bodies, and are sometimes blinded by the disease.
Then there are the diseases of filth and contaminated water. Dysentery, a severe form of diarrhea, is rampant. It causes dehydration and can be fatal, especially for infants, who can waste away in a matter of days. Typhoid fever, spread by contaminated food or water, is another common killer, causing high fevers, delirium, and internal bleeding. There is no effective treatment for any of these conditions. Your body's own immune system is your only defense, and it is a defense that is constantly weakened by malnutrition and the stress of hard labor. When you fall ill, you rely on folk remedies, prayers, and the hope that your constitution is strong enough to pull you through. The idea of being free from aches, pains, and sickness is a fantasy. You learn to live with a host of chronic conditions. Your joints ache, your stomach churns, your skin itches, your teeth rot. This is the background noise of your existence. You do not complain, because everyone around you is suffering from the same things. It is simply the price of being alive in a world that has no defense against the legions of invisible enemies that lay siege to your body every single day.
Death was always near. In the modern world, we have pushed death to the margins of our experience. It happens in hospitals, behind closed doors. It is sanitized, professionalized, and kept at a distance. But in your world, death is not a stranger. It is your constant neighbor. It is a public, intimate, and ever-present part of life. You are surrounded by it from your earliest memories. You have seen your infant siblings die from sickness or malnutrition, their small bodies wrapped in a simple cloth and buried in the churchyard. You have seen your neighbors carried from their homes, victims of an accident, a fever, or old age. You have seen public executions, the grim spectacle of justice in the village square. Death is not hidden away. It happens in the same single room where you eat and sleep. You might watch your own grandparent take their final breath, their body growing cold on the straw pallet next to yours. The process of dying is a communal event. Family and neighbors gather to watch over the dying, to offer prayers, and to witness the departure of the soul. The rituals surrounding death are of immense importance. When someone is clearly dying, the priest is summoned to administer the last rites, a series of sacraments designed to cleanse the soul of sin and prepare it for its journey to the afterlife. This is a moment of profound spiritual significance. After death, the body is washed by the women of the family and wrapped in a simple linen shroud. A wake is held in the hut, with the body laid out for friends and neighbors to come and pay their respects. This is a time for both grieving and for praying for the soul of the deceased. The funeral procession to the church is a public affair, the body carried on a simple wooden bier. The burial takes place in the consecrated ground of the churchyard, the one piece of land where everyone in the community, from the lord to the poorest peasant, will eventually find their final resting place.
This constant proximity to death shapes your entire worldview. It fosters a certain stoicism, an acceptance of the fragility of life. Grieving is real and painful, but it is also a familiar part of the human experience. With such high mortality rates, particularly among children, loss is a recurring theme in every family story. But this familiarity does not necessarily breed contempt. Instead, it breeds a profound focus on the afterlife. Since life on earth is so short, so painful, and so uncertain, the promise of heaven and the fear of hell become incredibly powerful motivators. Your actions in this life are seen as having eternal consequences. This belief system, the memento mori, or remember you must die, is not a morbid obsession, but a guiding principle. It encourages you to live a pious life, to seek forgiveness for your sins, and to be prepared at all times for your own death, which could come at any moment without warning. You see the reminders of death everywhere. The skulls and skeletons carved into church decorations, the graves you walk past every day in the churchyard, the tolling of the bell for another departed soul. You live with a deep understanding that your time here is fleeting. This does not necessarily make life joyless, but it frames your joys and sorrows in a different light. A good harvest, a healthy child, a day without pain, these are precious, temporary gifts. You learn to cherish the small moments of grace in a world that is otherwise filled with hardship and loss. You know that you are walking hand in hand with death every day of your life. It is not a question of if it will come, but when. And in a strange way, this constant awareness makes life itself more vivid, more immediate, and more meaningful.
Nightfall was terrifying. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the fields, a profound change comes over your world. The end of the workday does not bring a sense of relaxation and leisure, it brings a new set of fears. For a medieval peasant, nightfall is a time of genuine terror. The darkness that descends is absolute and primal. There is no street lighting, no ambient glow from a nearby city. Once the sun is gone, the world is plunged into an inky blackness that is almost total. The moon and the stars on a clear night offer the only illumination, but on a cloudy or moonless night, the darkness is a solid, suffocating presence. To be caught outside after dark is to be lost in a world where you cannot see your own hand in front of your face. This darkness is not empty. It is filled with dangers, both real and imagined. The real dangers are bad enough. The forests and uncultivated lands that surround your village are home to predators. Wolves are a genuine threat, especially in winter when food is scarce. A lone traveler at night is an easy target. Their howling in the distance is a sound that chills the blood, a reminder of the untamed wilderness that presses in on all sides of your small island of civilization. Human predators are just as feared. Outlaws, bandits, and desperate people haunt the roads and forests at night. Without any form of law enforcement patrolling the darkness, you are completely vulnerable. Travel at night is foolhardy and reserved for only the most urgent of errands. Even within the village, the darkness offers cover for thieves and wrongdoers. Once you are inside your hut, with the door barred and the shutter closed, you are in your only sanctuary. The fire in the hearth provides a small flickering circle of light and warmth, but it only pushes the immense darkness back to the corners of the room. The shadows it casts dance and leap on the walls, and an active imagination can easily turn them into monstrous shapes. But the imagined dangers are, in many ways, even more terrifying than the real ones. Your worldview is steeped in a belief in the supernatural. The night is the time when the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is at its thinnest. It is the time when malevolent spirits, ghosts, and demons are believed to roam the earth.
You have grown up with stories of these creatures. Tales told by the fire on a long winter's night speak of the ghosts of the unbaptized dead who wander the churchyard, of will-o'-the-wisps that lure travelers into deadly marshes, and of demons who seek to tempt or possess the unwary. Every unexplained noise outside your hut, the creak of a branch, the hoot of an owl, the rustling of an animal in the thatch, could be interpreted as a sign of a supernatural presence. Witches are another profound fear. It is believed that witches hold their Sabbaths at night, flying through the air to meet with the devil, and that they can cast spells to sour your milk, kill your livestock, or make your children sick. The fear of witchcraft is a powerful social force,
And an accusation, often born of neighborhood disputes or simple bad luck, can have deadly consequences. The night, therefore, is not a time for rest. It is a time for huddling together, for seeking safety in numbers, and for praying for protection from the evils that lurk in the dark. You go to sleep not with a sense of peace, but with a sense of trepidation, hoping to survive the night to see the blessed, safe light of the morning sun. The darkness is not just an absence of light, it is a presence, a hostile entity that holds the world in its grip until dawn.
The stories they told themselves. In a life of such relentless hardship, pain, and fear, how do you make sense of it all? How do you endure a world where your own survival is a daily struggle? You do it through stories. In a largely illiterate society, oral tradition is everything. The stories you hear, told by the fireside, in the fields, or by traveling storytellers, are your entertainment, your education, and your theology, all rolled into one. They are the framework you use to understand your place in the universe. The most important stories are the stories of your faith. The lives of the saints are a source of endless fascination and inspiration. These are not just pious tales. They are stories of incredible drama, suffering, and miraculous intervention. You hear of St. Lawrence, who was roasted alive on a griddle and famously joked to his torturers, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." You hear of St. Catherine, who debated and defeated 50 pagan philosophers before being condemned to be broken on a spiked wheel, which miraculously shattered at her touch. These stories serve a vital purpose. They show you that suffering can be holy, that faith can grant you superhuman endurance, and that even the most powerful earthly authorities are nothing compared to the power of God. The saints are your celestial friends and advocates. Each saint has a specialty. Saint Christopher protects travelers. Saint Apollonia helps with toothaches. Saint Anthony helps you find lost things. You pray to them directly, asking for their intercession in your daily struggles. They make the vast, impersonal power of God feel accessible and personal. Alongside the tales of saints are the terrifying tales of demons and the devil. These stories are not abstracts about the dangers of sin. You hear stories of how the devil can appear in disguise as a handsome stranger, a black dog, or a wealthy merchant to tempt you. You are told of people who made pacts with the devil for wealth or power, only to have their souls dragged to hell. These stories are a powerful form of social control, reinforcing the church's teachings and discouraging behavior that goes against moral norms. But not all stories are religious. There are epic poems and romances, often about the deeds of great heroes like King Arthur, Charlemagne, or Roland. While these stories are about nobles and knights, they provide a form of escapism, a glimpse into a world of honor, adventure, and magic. You also have a rich tradition of folk tales and fables. These are often stories about clever peasants who outwit greedy lords or foolish priests, or animal fables that teach a moral lesson. These stories provide an outlet for the resentments and frustrations of daily life, offering a world where the social order is temporarily turned upside down and the little guy comes out on top. And then there are the local legends, the stories tied to the landscape around you. That strange rock formation on the hill, that's where a giant dropped a stone. That deep pool in the river, it's bottomless and a water spirit lives there. These stories invest the natural world with meaning and mystery, turning your familiar surroundings into an enchanted landscape. These stories are your culture, your entertainment, and your psychological survival kit. They give you heroes to emulate, villains to fear, and explanations for a world that is often chaotic and cruel. They provide a sense of shared identity and a way to pass on the values and fears of your community to the next generation. They are the thread that weaves meaning into the rough fabric of your life.
After a long day of labor and a simple evening meal, sleep should be a welcome release. But sleep in the Middle Ages is not the solid 8-hour block of unconsciousness we strive for today. It is a cold, fragmented, and often anxious experience, punctuated by periods of wakefulness. Your bed, as we've established, is a simple straw pallet on the floor of your hut. You huddle together with your family for warmth, a mass of bodies under a coarse woolen blanket. The cold is a constant companion, seeping up from the earth floor and through the thin walls. The fire has been banked for the night, reduced to embers to conserve fuel, and the hut is almost as cold inside as it is outside. You sleep in the same linen undertunic you wear during the day. It is likely damp with sweat and stiff with grime. There is no comfort here, only a desperate attempt to conserve body heat. Historians believe that many people in the pre-industrial era practiced what is called segmented sleep, or biphasic sleep. You would go to bed shortly after dusk, as there is little to do in the total darkness and burning precious candles is a luxury you cannot afford. You would sleep for a few hours, a period often called the first sleep, then sometime after midnight you would naturally wake up. This period of wakefulness, lasting for an hour or two, was not seen as a form of insomnia or a problem to be fixed. It was a normal part of the night. People would use this time in various ways. You might get up to tend to the fire, check on the animals if they are sheltered inside, or use the chamber pot. It was also a time for quiet contemplation, for prayer, or for intimate conversation with your spouse. The world is quiet, and this is one of the few moments of privacy you might have.
Suggest it was a favored time for marital relations, as you were rested from the first sleep and not yet burdened by the coming day's labor. After this waking period, you would go back to sleep for another few hours, a second sleep, which would last until dawn. This pattern of sleep was not a choice. It was likely dictated by the natural rhythms of light and dark and the living conditions of the time. However, this sleep is rarely deep and peaceful. It is constantly disturbed. A baby cries, someone coughs, the dog scratches at fleas, mice rustle in the thatch above your head. The physical discomfort of your bed, the cold, and the constant presence of others make deep, restorative sleep a rare luxury. Your dreams are likely filled with the anxieties of your daily life. You might dream of a poor harvest, of the Lord's steward, or of the sickness that took your neighbor. The fears of the day follow you into the night. The boundary between the sleeping and waking world feels thin. The stories of ghosts and demons that you hear are most potent at night, and a strange dream or a nightmare could easily be interpreted as a spiritual visitation or a demonic attack. So you do not wake up in the morning feeling refreshed and restored. You wake up feeling much as you did when you went to bed, tired, cold, and sore. Sleep is not an escape from the hardships of your life. It is merely a brief, troubled pause in a cycle of endless labor. It offers a temporary respite for your aching muscles, but little peace for your worried mind. The coming of the dawn is a relief, not because you are well rested, but because it signals the end of the terrifying darkness and the return to a world of familiar, if difficult, work.
After exploring the relentless hardship, the filth, the hunger, and the fear that define your daily existence, it's natural to wonder, was there any joy? Was there any concept of a good life for a medieval peasant? The answer is yes, but it is a definition of happiness that is profoundly different from our own. It is not found in personal ambition, material wealth, or individual freedom. It is found in security, community, and the simple absence of disaster. A good life, first and foremost, is a life with enough food. A good year is a year with a good harvest.
It is the deep, primal satisfaction of seeing the granary full, of knowing that your family will not face the hunger gap in the spring. The taste of bread, even coarse, dark bread, is the taste of success. The feeling of a full belly after the evening meal is a feeling of profound contentment. A good life is one where your family is healthy. It is watching your children survive the perilous early years, seeing them grow strong and capable. It is a year without a major outbreak of disease sweeping through the village. It is the absence of the sound of coughing from the next pallet over, the absence of the feverish brow and the delirious mumbling. In a world where sickness and death are constant companions, a period of good health for your loved ones is the greatest blessing imaginable. A good life is a life of peace. It is a year where no armies march through your lands, where you are not forced to flee your home, where the horizon is not filled with the smoke of burning villages. It is the simple, quiet rhythm of the seasons, uninterrupted by the chaos and violence of war. It is the ability to plant your crops with the hope that you will be the one to harvest them.
Your life is interwoven with the lives of your neighbors. You work together in the fields, you celebrate together on feast days, and you support each other in times of crisis. The birth of a child, a wedding, or a successful harvest are all communal celebrations. The festivals of the church calendar are high points of the year. On these days, the grueling labor stops. There is feasting, perhaps a pig has been slaughtered, and drinking. There's music, dancing, and games. These moments of collective joy are a vital release from the pressures of daily life, a time to reaffirm the bonds that hold your small world together. There is also a deep, quiet satisfaction to be found in skill and work. The feeling of plowing a perfectly straight furrow, of scything a field of hay with a smooth rhythmic motion, of weaving a sturdy piece of cloth. In a world where your labor is directly tied to your survival, there is an inherent dignity and meaning in a job well done. You are not working for an abstract salary. You are working for the bread you'll eat, the clothes you will wear, the roof over your head. This direct connection provides a sense of purpose that can be lost in the modern world. So, a good life is not defined by what you have, but by what you do not have to endure. It is a year without famine, a year without plague, a year without war. It is a full stomach, a healthy family, and a strong community. It is the simple, profound joy of survival. It is looking at the faces of your family around the fire, hearing the sound of their breathing, and feeling a deep, quiet gratitude for having made it through another day, together.
So, we come to the end of our day in the Middle Ages. We have felt the bone-deep cold of the morning, the gnawing pain of hunger, the discomfort of filth and parasites. We have endured a day of back-breaking labor, navigated a world of rigid hierarchy and brutal justice, and faced the constant, looming presence of disease and death. We have huddled in fear of the night and found solace only in stories in the hope of an afterlife. The question is not if you would find it difficult. The question is why a modern person, with all our knowledge and advantages, would likely not last a day. It is not because you are weak in spirit. It is because you are, for lack of a better word, soft. And that is not an insult. It is a testament to the success of the world we have built. Your body is not prepared. Your immune system, protected by vaccines and sanitation, has never been challenged by the sheer volume of pathogens present in medieval water, food, and air. A simple drink from the village well could lay you low with dysentery. The bacteria on your own skin entering a small cut could lead to a fatal infection. Your digestive system, accustomed to a varied and processed diet,
would struggle with the coarse, monotonous, and often semi-raw food. Your muscles, even if you are athletic, are not conditioned for the specific, relentless strain of 12 hours of agricultural labor with rudimentary tools. Your back would scream in protest. Your hands would be a mass of bleeding blisters by noon. Your mind, too, is unprepared. You were accustomed to a degree of personal freedom, privacy, and choice that was unimaginable. The absolute submission required, the lack of any personal agency, the constant oppressive weight of authority from the Lord and the Church would be psychologically crushing. The constant noise, smell, and lack of personal space would lead to a sensory overload that would fray your nerves.
Is in resilience. The people of the Middle Ages were not superheroes. They were human beings, but they were forged in a crucible of hardship from the moment of birth. They were survivors of a brutal filtering process. They had a physical and mental toughness that was a prerequisite for reaching adulthood. Their bodies were accustomed to pain, their minds inured to fear and loss. They did not expect comfort. They did not expect a long or easy life. They expected hardship, and they had developed the coping mechanisms, stoicism, faith, strong community bonds, to endure it. You wouldn't last a day, not because you are inferior, but because you are a product of a different world. A world that has, through centuries of effort, struggle, and discovery, managed to conquer the very things that made their lives so brutal. You have access to clean water, abundant food, medicine, education, and the rule of law. These are the things they could only dream of, the things their suffering and endurance eventually helped to build. So do not judge them by our standards, and do not judge yourself too harshly against theirs. Instead, feel a sense of profound awe for their resilience. They were tough, and because they were tough, we are, thankfully, allowed to be soft. And as you drift off to sleep in your warm, comfortable bed, in a world free from the terrors of the medieval night, perhaps you can spare a final thought for those forgotten lives, a thought not of pity, but of deep, quiet respect.